Hey, what's up, Blondie Virgin Gang? Hope you're doing well. I'm doing pretty good today on stuff I got semi-recently in the mail. Is going to be this SAR lot right here featuring Regigigas V-Star, and that's going to be from V-Star Universe. And then we got Reverum EX SAR, which is going to be from Ruler of the Black Flame. I love this card, by the way. I think this card's great. There's some people who don't like Reverum. That's perfectly fine. I do think its shiny is cool. I like the Pokemon. I like its Arc and Team Star. I think it's a well-designed Pokemon, in my personal opinion. You don't like it, that's fine. Ed's Blaziken is who I bought this from on Instagram. I believe I've shouted them out before. I buy things from them every now and again. They'll put up a couple cards. I'll grab them. Always been a pleasure to talk to. Always been super nice to deal with. I appreciate it so much. Check them out if you want. Let's talk about something a little mundane. Yes, I see what the other pages are talking about, okay? I've seen it. I know Rattle, Rock, everyone is talking about it, okay? I get it. I'm going to put my foot in there too at one point. I just want to let the whole thing play out. And I need a minute. I need a fucking minute where I'm not just like exhausted from work to actually look at that mess, that train wreck of a thing happening with said person involved. It's going to be a lot, and I do think a couple more things are going to happen. I've heard of statements going to be made. I need a second. It's already making me stumble. I need a minute, okay? I will talk about it, though, I promise. Let's talk about something I kind of noticed, like writing on the wall before it kind of happened, since we were talking about Mystic and Vintage and possible pumping of all that stuff. Let's talk about Vintage versus Modern a little bit. I've seen a lot of people talking about this. It's been a pretty big thing on Instagram for certain creators talking about this stuff. Before I go into it, this is not a knock at people who like Vintage. This is not a knock at people who like Modern. This is not a knock at people who prefer said card over one or the other. It's more or less people that are just super, super opinionated to the point where they have complete disdain for one or the other. Like they just fucking hate Vintage, or they just absolutely see no point in Modern existing whatsoever. That's what I'm looking at, okay? Or just having crazy takes about either or. I got one really good one, and it really is funny. I'll bring that up too. But just Modern versus Vintage is something that has been happening, especially on Instagram. People talking about how Modern just absolutely blows. There's too many SARs. There's too many dank cards. There's too big of sets. There's no value in any of that stuff. I buy a box, I'm not even making any of my money back, as if the hobby's not supposed to be fun at all. And not like you can't open a Vintage booster box and not get your money back either. And then there's people that are just straight up like hating on Vintage, just hardcore, just like it's so nasty, it's so old. There's so much Vintage out there. There's so many weird arts. There's so many better things with alternate arts nowadays too. There are some really, really hot takes out there for a lot of stuff. There's all about like limiting stuff and how many packs of something exists, how many boxes were made of things. And I mean, Pokemon product exists. It's big, man. They're still opening vintage stuff everywhere. There's still vintage toys you can find. There's still vintage cards that are relatively cheap on the market. I mean, yeah, you want to get some of them graded. Sure, that's going to cost you a little bit, but if you want to add a binder card to your collection of, say, like even some of the gold stars or some of the shinings, yeah, they're expensive, but they're not really as expensive as you would necessarily think in some cases, especially on condition, right? So I've seen big time where people, let me start with like the vintage, right? Let me start with how people feel about vintage. I've seen a crazy fucking take I kind of want to talk about. This happened a couple weeks ago. I kind of forgot about it, but it's been popping back up, especially with like the Mystic 7. Oh, the vintage pump. He bought a bunch of boxes and like there was some stuff going around, okay? Once again, saw this on Instagram. This is a pretty wild take in my personal opinion. Let me go over it for you real fast. Everyone operates differently, but in regards to Pokemon, I believe you should go into trades and TV fully aware that whenever someone trades vintage for modern, there's added percentage to the vintage trade value. So the TV stands for trade value. What this person is going to propose is that if you were trading anything like modern towards something vintage, the vintage automatically has a premium. Doesn't necessarily matter what the vintage is. Doesn't matter what kind of trash card it is. Doesn't matter if it's base set unlimited, where it was printed to the fucking ground. There's a ton of fossil boxes still popping up. There's jungle cards everywhere. Doesn't matter anything like that. Whatever the fucking trade value is, it's vintage, bro. Vintage has that big nut mentality. It has that shit where it's just better than all the other cards. It's better than anything else that came out. These cards are just all automatically better. Hey, two cards could be worth exactly the same amount, right? It could be fucking like a Umbreon VMAX alternate art versus like a Shining card that worth about the same, right? Say like a $600 one or anything like that. Does not matter. Since that card is modern, you're trading it for that. Well, fuck you, bro. This has a percentage on it. This has a premium that's going to go on that stuff. I need an extra $150 from you, big dog, because this is that vintage stuff, and you don't step into the big bad world of vintage without having a little bit extra money in your fucking back pocket. That is such a stupid take. And leave it to people who do nothing but talk about value to fucking move the goalpost about value too. Like, especially when they bought like modern product of something, and then it's like, yo man, this is kind of pricey for that stuff. Hey man, that's the premium. This is what all the big kids want. They want to open up Champion's Path. They want to open up these shiny Japanese sets. I know it's a little pricey, but that's the premium you pay. But then, of course, when it goes back to vintage or something like that, no, that shit's got to have a premium on it because it's old and crusty and smells like tapioca. That's what needs to happen with that shit. It's old, so I need to have more money for it. Such a stupid ass take. He gives a couple of examples too, like fucking Rayquaza VMAXs and stuff like that. Vintage should always carry an added premium over modern cards, excluding trophy. Oh, I'm glad you have a fucking limit right there, big guy. I'm glad the trophy cards don't mean, well, those are different. PSA 10 Moonbryon for a PSA 8 Gold Star Mewtwo is not a fair trade. Don't get hustled. Well, if they're worth the fucking same, then yes, it is. I hate how motherfuckers do that stuff too. I hate how the value shifts around, and then all of a sudden, it just, people like this are the biggest people who move the goalposts whenever it fucking benefits them. I hate it. They don't have any consistency. Their backbones lack any kind of fucking calcium. And it's just such a stupid take. The way people talk about money has changed so much over the last 5 years too. Let me give you an example of that as well. So this is a post from about like 5 years ago. Are new Pokemon cards worth any money, or will they accumulate in value? And this was the top answer at the time. This was back in like 2018 timeframe, 2017. This is a yes and no question. It really depends. Are modern cards worth any money? Certainly. Will they hold value? Probably not. The reason most Pokemon cards are worth a lot of money is for being good in standard rotation and being good. Discounting the Hyper Rare Charizard GX, which is expensive because Charizard, the most expensive cards, are the good ones, which are the ones that are standard in rotation, the ones that everybody puts in their decks. Look at Cynthia, the best supporter in standard rotation. She goes for about 80 US, and her full art for about 5-6 US for a standard card, which is going to be like, that's not the standard. It's going to be her regular card for about $5 to actually pull one. Her value is inflated purely because she is the best supporter that is playable right now. So this was back in the day. Value used to be driven a lot by playable cards. It didn't used to fucking be because of like waifu or fucking, you know, I want to get this shit graded or alternate art standard or anything like that. Popular Pokemon always had their popular Pokemon place. However, it was not driven so much by stuff. What changed? Well, people changed because things around them changed. I mean, we can talk about the world event, we can talk about the pandemic, but ultimately we're out of it and people are still fucking hustling and trying to do their shit with Pokemon cards, right? It's something that unfortunately hasn't gone anywhere because people are going to come in, and another event can happen like that at any point where people could do that stuff. You can't predict it. You can't say anything. I'm completely against people pumping certain cards, right? But at the same time, when it does happen and people fucking move to it, where are they going to look to? They're going to look at YouTubers. They're going to look at influencers. They're going to look and see what people should be investing in. That's why people who run channels where they talk about what fucking product you should buy, what singles you should grade, and all these returns and stuff, they do extremely well because this hobby is very easy to influence. All you got to do is have a little bit of money, a little bit of say, put your stuff out there. And I'm not saying all the fucking advice is bad, right? What I'm saying is people are always looking for the next bag because everything about Pokemon has changed, right? Modern has definitely taken a big step forward, and it's definitely made its way into a lot of people's binders and a lot of people's conversations talking about cards. And there's people that don't think that should exist, and that's a big problem. On the fucking flip side, there's people who look at fucking vintage cards like they're super modern heads or something like that, and they're like, oh, the vintage fuck bros have completely ruined my take on vintage whatsoever. Like, vintage cards are just, they're nasty, they're icky, they have nothing at all to offer. I've seen a couple takes where it was like that too, and I think it's where people have ruined stuff for them. Do not let certain people just ruin how you feel about cards. There is a lot of good vintage cards out there. There's a lot of affordable vintage cards out there that you can add to your binder. Yes, you getting a fucking graded one for certain ones is going to be kind of tough, but there is several vintage cards that are absolutely beautiful that do not break the bank at all. There's several of the old EX era cards. There's some of the fucking Neo ones. There's old Wizards of the Coast ones from fucking base set and stuff like that. And you can pick up some relatively good copies for not a bad price, and they look great in a binder. If you don't like them, that's okay. If you don't like modern, that's okay. But to completely just absolutely shit on the fact that either one exists at all and there's an actual player base and fan base and collector base that wants those, it's something that's happened a lot lately, and I think like that you're going to see a lot more people pumping certain things one way or another. Modern gets pumped pretty bad, vintage gets pumped pretty bad, and that's because this place is so easily influenced. There's so many PokeTubers trying to make it big, and there's so many people trying to make a bag wherever it is, whether it's Whatnot or YouTube or Lives or Breaks or something like that. You're just going to see it, man. I just don't think talking like that's necessarily helping anything. I think like people genuinely liking the cards they like. I mean, there is a ton of absolutely beautiful modern cards, man. I mean, like the AR cards they've made recently, there is so fucking many of them, and there are so many of them that are good. I don't really care so much that some of the SARs are affordable. I don't really care that there's not really a ton of value super much in modern right this second, unless you're going over into Japanese and you just see a bunch of cards just going up. I don't think every card should be worth a fuck ton of money, and I do think the actual entry point being at modern for Pokemon cards right this second, where kids and people who want to just casually collect have a good shot at getting some great cards from stuff and not breaking the fucking bank, I think is a good thing. Not everything needs to be super valuable, but there is definitely nothing wrong with certain vintage cards and people who collect them either. Not every vintage collector is a bad person. Not everybody who collects vintage cards is a pumper, and not every single person who collects vintage cards is out here trying to fucking scam people. Some people have made a bad name for them. There's some people like them. There's some good vintage cards out there, okay? Just collect what you want, do what you want to do. It's an argument I've seen. It's a fucking Civil War type shit. Captain America on one side, fucking Iron Man on the other. Vintage versus mod. It's always going to be a thing. It gets views. It gets clicks. People fucking like talking about it. But truly, buy what you like to buy. Collect what you like to collect. And honestly, you'll come out on top regardless, because you'll always be able to open your binder and be like, fuck yeah, I've got that card in there. So I got. Appreciate it, Virgin. See you later.